And you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here?
It's time for How Did I Get Here? And now here are your hosts,
So, Chandra Washington, it's really nice to meet you.
Hey,
James introduced us.
Right.
I've been going through your work like last night and today. And, I got to tell you, my mom was like a ballet dancer and was interested in dance when I was a kid. But I'm not going to lie to you, Chandra. I did not understand dance until about 10 years ago, and I'm 51 years old. I didn't get it till I was 41 years old.
What was it that you didn't understand?
I just don't
why
know.
People do it?
That was part of it, and like I just didn't. There's a friend of mine named Sarah Rucker here. I don't know if you know her, but she's involved in kind of like preserving the cultural musical heritage of Texas. I can't remember what foundation she works for, but anyway, she's also a dancer, and I went out and saw some stuff, and there was something about the water supply, a piece about the water supply going down in the world, and sort of the desperate crisis that was coming. It was a dance about that, and that's where I got it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why.
She's in Austin?
Yeah, she's in Austin.
Okay.
So anyway, I was really moved by it. Yeah, and I thought it was great. And let's start with this. How have you been? How are you doing for the last 3 weeks?
For the last 3 weeks, wow. How have I been? There's certain images that, I have to kind of shake, occasionally certain images will come in my head, and that's part of the reason why I haven't been dealing with social media much anymore.
It's pretty rough out there.
Even yesterday, I was out at the water, and I had this float, one of those flotation things that you have to blow up. Mm-hmm. And so I was squeezing the air out, and as I put my leg on it, I remembered George Floyd and how that man put his knee on his neck.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just weird,
same kind of
recollections.
Action. Yeah.
Just come up, it's like you just kind of squeezed the life out of that person. And I just had to,
Made you
I kind of
back?
pulled back for a second. Yeah. Yeah. So, I'll have moments where I'll get triggered like that. There'll be certain images or something that will make me remember or feel. I tend to be kind of I can get a sensory reaction to certain things. It's kind of hard to describe, but it'll take me to a moment of either my suffering or someone else's suffering. It's very, very interesting how that happens.
There's something about that multi-generational racial trauma that I've been learning about that I didn't really understand, and through learning about that, and I'm not taking this off and into myself, just giving you a perspective that I've gotten. My parents were born in Cuba. They moved here when they were kids, and I see that now. That helped me better understand the actions of a lot of my family members.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I totally get that, because when I think about my mother, we're practically the same person. We were almost born on the same day, and to see some of the things that I like, and especially the things I didn't like about her, I was able to get a better insight on why she was the way she was when I started realizing some of the things that she lived through.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah.
So it seems like a lot of your life and your life work, outside of being hired as an actor to be in films or in television shows, is all directed towards healing, like your dance, your music. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say as of late, it kind of stemmed from my association with two people. I don't know if you've heard of a man named Dr. Sadie.
No.
Okay, have you ever heard of Lisa Left Eye Lopez?
Of course.
The TLC?
Yeah.
Do you remember when she went to Honduras?
Yes.
And she was, that's who she was visiting. She was staying in the Usha village.
Okay.
Well, Sadie was before. I never knew Lisa Lopez, but I knew Sadie long before they even became connected. I met him in D.C. and I received some healing from him, and that part of that. I was explaining about my relationship with Sadie.
You with Sadie?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Sadie. Also, his given name is Alfredo Bowman. He's deceased now, but his claim to fame was healing diseases that the conventional medical people said were incurable.
Right.
And long story short, there was a big court case in New York State Supreme Court, and he beat the claims of practicing medicine without a license, making fraudulent claims of curing AIDS and other diseases, and using substances not approved by the FDA. He beat all of that by bringing 77 patients into the courtroom that had medical records before and after, whatever disease they had. We're talking everything from blindness. I think it was about 7 diseases, AIDS being one of them, lupus, herpes, blindness. Several different diseases. Saying that to say that I met Sadie in D.C. before all of that blew up, and I had been a recipient of his healing, and we became really close friends. And as a result, we ended up planning the Usha village. What's today is the Usha village where Lisa Lopez was visiting and getting her healing. And in the interim, I also met Hammond Blewett. Are you familiar with Hammond Blewett?
No, ma'am.
World Saxophone Quartet. You ever heard of them?
Who?
The World Saxophone Quartet.
No.
Well, Hammond Blewett was, prior to his dying about 2 years ago, he was the baddest, arguably the baddest baritone saxophone player on the jazz in the jazz world on the planet, and. He was a friend of Sadie's, and he was coming through there. And Blewett was talking about doing a thing called the Healing Caravan. And so I kept egging him on about it. I'm like, look, let's do this. And then finally he decided we would do it. And we did. I actually arranged to have the first Healing Caravan done here at an event called First Night Austin.
Uh-huh. And
it was kind of all over the place that first time. Brandon played, Michael Stevens played. A mutual friend of mine in Blues named Tyrone Duval played, and I think that was it. And then after that, there was another event that I was supposed to be doing with Blewett up his way, because he's a native of the East St. Louis area, and there was something that was being planned for that. And he fell out with me because I had a problem being called. I was being billed as a healer, and I didn't want to be. I'm like, I don't consider myself to be a healer. He got mad at me and decided he didn't want to do it anymore. So he turned it over to me. So that's how I ended up getting the Healing Caravan. Okay. But since then since that we became friends. I was really, really crushed by it initially, but since then, we were able to talk about it and worked out whatever. I kind of got behind what his real issue is with it, and that's kind of how we work things out as family. And since then, I've been the artistic director of the Healing Caravan, and that is a multi-dimensional performance piece I utilized dance, live music, spoken word, my original spoken word pieces. And it's pretty much all improv, with the exception of some of the spoken word pieces that I already had written out, or, had already, committed to memory. The music was improv, the dance was improv. And it's, focuses on different aspects of healing oneself.
So having said that, I mean, what all have you done, like, to take care of yourself during the quarantine, during the, like, how have you sort of, like, taken care of yourself physically and mentally? I know you're a vegetarian. You've written a cookbook on healthy eating, so obviously you're eating healthy. But how else do you maintain your sanity?
Well, well, I would say that I'm actually a pescatarian. I do eat fish on occasion, although I'm kind of cutting back on certain things. And because of menopausal situations, I've started tweaking my diet prior to, I stopped dealing with dairy altogether when I had asthma. And I guess that was one of the illnesses that I was able to reverse thanks to Sabi and his teachings. Yeah. But I've been I started incorporating goat milk products because goat milk is closer to the pH of human milk, although, technically. Right. Grown folk ain't supposed to be drinking milk. But, because of the whole menopausal things, I started seeing that I needed more fat in my diet. And I was eating fish, and fish didn't seem to be getting it. But anyway, all that being said, how I've been, keeping up with exercise, doing yoga, getting as much green drinks in me as possible. Yeah. It's been hard to do things like fasting lately. Although, the reason why I'm kind of enjoying my present state is because of the years that I did like some major extended fast. Yeah. Like some of the fast, the last major extended fast that I did was at the Wusha village. And I don't know, I think after like 40 or 50 days, I stopped counting. So, it's another kind of it puts you in a well, they say that fasting could buy you so many years off your life. I remember when my dad was sick, he had 2 massive strokes, and he was in intensive care, and he couldn't talk. He was paralyzed on one side. Sadie was living at the time, so he sent me a bunch of his herbal compounds. And because he had aphasia, normally he would have just refused the herbs altogether, but he would do stuff like say no and then open his mouth. So I just started throwing the stuff in his mouth, right? And so he started getting better. But of course the people in the hospital were like, I wasn't allowing them to give him certain things. And so and then he, part of the whole process is to eliminate, the toxins, right. To eliminate it through your intestines, through your bowels. And they were really, down on that, saying he was losing electrolytes and all this stuff. And so then they insisted on giving him a blood test. I'm like, go ahead, because they wanted to make you see if, he was, deficient. But, and then, I kept asking, well, what's the results of the blood test? They would never give me the results. But then the nurses were coming in and looking at the bowels and saying, what's this and how's it working? Yeah. So
you knew it was working.
Yeah. So in 2 weeks time, he was out of intensive care and in rehab. And that was like really freaking him out too, because my father was like in a really, really, really rough state. Yeah. But saying all that to say that, I don't even know why I went there, but I guess, I know why, because I was saying that when you cleanse, it gives you like a kind of like a new leaf or more years, adds more years to your life. And my father actually got about another 15 years out of his life from that. That's good. From that cleansing, yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So you were born here in Austin and raised?
Well, I was born here in Austin and spent the first 10 years of my life here.
Okay.
What happened was, and if we're going to get into the whole race situation and what my experience was
Yeah.
as a child growing up in Austin, Texas, in the 60s, early 60s, I recall my parents had to do, different types of work to supplement their income. And my aunt, who was more like the closest thing to my grandmother, she lived with us too. So one of my earliest feelings of feeling like I wasn't, that things were different, between different types of people. My aunt, she lived with us, and we used to have to pick her up from her work. And she worked across I-35 on the west side at the home of these white folks, at a real nice home somewhere in West Austin. And we lived on the east side. Our house was, was not anything to. Well, how should I say? It was a pretty rundown place, actually. My parents were in transition. They eventually, saved up enough money to build a house off of MLK on the street called Astor Place, which is a street where a lot of the Black educators lived. But before that, we lived, but right across from the State Cemetery.
Can I ask you real quick, what did your parents do?
Well, let's see. My mother was a teacher. She was striving to be employed with AISD,
Okay.
but they wouldn't employ her. She eventually got employed with the Archdiocese of Austin because I was raised Catholic. I'm not a practicing Catholic now, but we were raised Catholic. My father was one of the first, if not the first, Black person to be hired to work for the IRS here in Austin.
Wow. Okay.
And that's how we ended up going to the D.C. area that we left when I was 10. But anyway, getting back to my first...
I'm sorry to take you out of that.
No. That's fine. I remember, I was able to make a comparison between, the way these people were living and the way we were living. And feeling a certain way. I couldn't have been more than, I don't know, I couldn't have been more than 4 years old or something like that. But I remember, the disparity. And then there were other little funny, I had a strange kind of sensibility when I was a child. I remember back in the day when you could leave your kids in the car and nobody would mess with them. I had two other siblings, my oldest brother and the middle sister. We were sitting in the car, in the backseat of the car. Again, our car wasn't, anything to be excited about. It was like an older model Oldsmobile. I remember this car very distinctly because I think I might have got my hand or finger shutting the door or something. Well, at one time. But anyway, that was always a great fear with these cars. But anyway, we're sitting in the backseat of the car. This white woman comes up and she's talking to us. I don't remember so much what she said, but how she was saying what she was saying. And I didn't understand what patronizing meant, what that word, the definition of that word was. But now that I have, the maturity to and a certain understanding, I felt the patronization that she was, putting towards us. That was another instance. And then I just remember my parents, like I said, there were things that I loved about them. Then there were things that I didn't. One thing that was kind of disturbing was particularly, say, with my mom and with a lot of Black people, because we had a way of taking on the negativity that was projected on us because of our appearance, because of our dark skin, because we look different, basically. I remember my mother, I think we had come back from the dentist, And she was really proud of the fact that the dentist said that my dental structure was similar to that of a Caucasian. I mean, she was really proud of that. And I just remember feeling kind of odd and conflicted. You know, there was something in me that said, okay, well, I'm not white, but this is something I'm supposed to be happy about. But then later, as I told you, my mother got hired to teach in the Archdiocese of Austin at a school called Sacred Heart that's over here in what was then considered Northeast Austin. And I guess a perk of that was that me and my sister were able to attend their I don't know if we attended there free or as at a reduced rate, but we would attend. My sister was, I think, 2 grades ahead of me, and I was in 3rd grade. And prior to that, I was this, bubbly, kind of some, cocky kind of little kid, right? Really what they consider bright. I went from being that to coming to this situation and being treated basically invisible. No one would talk to me. None of the kids would talk to me. They acted like I didn't exist, really. And I remember also because their curriculum was ahead of, the school that I had gone to earlier. But prior to, I was going to Blackshire. I went to Blackshire I got skipped to 2nd grade. So I was going to Blackshire I only went there for 1 year. And then that was 2nd grade and 3rd grade. I started going to Sacred Heart. So I ended up going from being at the top of the class at Blackshire to I think I actually may have failed 2nd grade, 3rd grade going into 4th grade. Or no, I think it was 4th grade going into 5th grade. But my mother, she could be very persuasive. She was talking to the nuns and, told them that she would get, bring my, grades up or whatever she told them. But I ended up, going to 5th grade. It was kind of rough. I just remember I really was into this idea of wanting to be accepted. And so I felt like a chameleon. I changed, a shapeshifter. Which I lived like 2 different lives. Like I would come home and play with my friends in my community in the neighborhood and, be that person. Then when I was at Sacred Heart, I was, wanting to be accepted by my white peers and doing whatever it was I felt I needed to do to be accepted by them that way. By the time, and then check this out. From there, we moved from Austin, Texas, me trying to be this little white girl, to D.C., Washington D.C. Back then, it was like over 70% Black, right? And so we moved to this neighborhood that was experiencing white flight, right? So people were moving out of that neighborhood because Black people were moving in. And I went to the school. I could walk right up the street to it. And then I went from being trying to get the favor of these white children to having to once again be a chameleon and change my being to get the favor of my predominantly Black student body. And by 7th grade, I had ulcers. I literally got ulcers.
Yeah.
I was a mess, man. And because, there were other things that I missed when I was going to Sacred Heart. When I was going to Blackshire, like just things like learning how to tell time. I didn't know how to tell time until I had I was forced to learn when I was in 7th grade. I got a little, they had me working in the attendance office. And, when you sign people's like attendance slips or whatever, you had to put the time on it. I didn't know how to tell time.
That is such a strange, I've never heard that before.
So I had to teach myself how to tell time. I would look at the clock and I would know where it was before. And then I kind of figured out how, the difference between
right.
I just had to figure it out and learn myself how to tell time, because there was this gap in the learning or in the curriculum. I guess maybe they would have taught me how to tell time in third grade at Blacksher, but at Sacred Heart they were well ahead of that. They were doing this thing called new math, and so they were way past telling time and all that. But or maybe I was supposed to get the time telling thing in first grade. I don't know, but I missed the whole telling time thing.
I'm glad you figured it out.
Yeah, man. I mean, but I just remember being so panicked and just, oh man. I mean, the things that we get panicked over, as kids anyway. Yeah.
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 And that age is difficult enough as it is, like 7th grade, 13, 14.
Oh God.
You just want to jump out of your skin.
I mean, it's this period where you're caught between being a baby and wanting to be grown. It's this little in between period that's just, it's horrible. And I got bullied and teased and all kinds of. It was horrible. It was really horrible. But I remember I read, I think it was in 9th grade. My brother had a copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X, and by then, it changed. Reading that book changed my life in terms of just having a stronger sense of self as a Black person. But on the other hand, it made me very resentful. It made me resentful of my parents. It made me resentful of white people. I just had a lot of resentment.
Did it make you resentful toward your parents because they were trying to play along,
assimilate,
and be like, "Hey, we're cool," Yeah.
Yeah, and they valued, there was, and I kind of get it in the sense of that they did a lot of stuff. But my father, some of the stuff that he and my uncle got away with in terms of, fighting against these oppressive white supremacists. I'm surprised that he lived as long as he did, I mean, stories of, say, pulling up at a gas station in Marshall, Texas, saying, fill it up. And then, where's your bathroom? Well, we don't have bathrooms for niggas. And before they can get the whole word out, my father pulls out a gun and said, drain every drop of gas out of that car. So then everybody starts scattering, right? And so he just drives away with he just drives away from there.
I have to say that's pretty cool, man.
Oh, there's more. He and my uncle came back from the service. Now, mind you, my father got a Purple Heart fighting in. It was a conflict, I think, with I forget which conflict it was.
Korea?
It wasn't the Korean. It wasn't Korea. It was a Japanese conflict. But anywho, they were stationed in New Guinea, and the ship sunk, and they were in these rafts and surviving sharks and all this.
Yeah.
I think he got wounded, and so he went through all that. Fast forward to coming back home to Austin. By then, I'm trying to think. I don't think he was married then. He was actually a native of Bastrop, but they were in Austin. He and my uncle were in Austin, and they get on the bus. So they sit in the front, and then then the bus stops, and then the guy says, "Y'all, you boys are gonna have to go to the back now." And they're like, "Well, why? There's plenty of seats here. What's going on?" And then it hits them. They're back in, because they had been overseas,
right.
Australia, all these different places where, they lived a whole different kind of life there.
They were fighting for that guy's freedom.
Yeah, there were funny things going on. My dad told me about how they'd be dancing at the USO club and the white girls would be, trying to touch their butt to see if they had tails because, the white soldiers told them that they had tails. And there was another story behind that too, where they jacked some soldiers up because of that. But anyway, back to the bus. One of them, I think it was my uncle, one of them pulls out a gun. I think maybe both of them pulled out a gun and told him to drive this damn bus, right? Until they got to their stop. And then he's like running the metals and stuff underneath. You know what we went through so that you could be here. I mean, he was like, they were like really lecturing them. And he said the domestics in the back, they were just going crazy. You know, like all the black folks in the back, they were like, they were scared to death, right? I guess they thought they were going to get killed or something, or somebody was going to get killed. So then they get off the bus, and that was the end of that. I mean, these are the type of things that they, kind of survived. I mean, any other,
was there any, like when you say you were young in the early 60s, do you remember any kind of segregation or anything like that?
I had come right on the tail end of desegregation.
Okay.
So I didn't really experience the water fountains and not being able to go into stores and that kind of thing. But my parents certainly did. There was something in reference to that I was. Oh, the one thing I do recall about the desegregation was that Black folks here was so. I guess they were so thrilled with the fact that they could go wherever they wanted and be where they wanted from desegregation, that we basically abandoned our own communities and our businesses, and that in that sense, I don't feel like desegregation was good for the Black community, because we basically abandoned our stuff to go be a part of their stuff.
Yeah,
and that's kind of how it happened here in Austin.
Yeah, that seems to have happened in a few places, because a lot of what I've seen, there's some economists and some intellectuals and historians that I've been watching over the last few weeks that have pointed out that on the economic level of racism, and sort of what's happened is that there were little like the part of Tulsa, the Black Wall Street part of Tulsa, where you had you had your economy, like that was burgeoning. Yeah, the money was coming back into the neighborhood, as opposed to now that it's all owned by people that aren't in the neighborhood. So there's money, but it just leaves, and it comes back in to take care of itself.
Right,
and it's people.
I mean, Austin had that. I mean, we had our own theater. You name it. We had it.
Yeah. We had it.
But after desegregation, everybody was like, "Oh wow, we can go to the white neighborhood now." So we can get white jobs with where the white people are.
Yeah.
And, they could see me as better. In some cases, it was better in terms of pay and all that. And conditions. And even the schools were better.
But then it becomes those invisible sort of lines of racism, and invisible lines you can't cross. You know what I mean?
I don't. What do you mean?
Like they go from actual segregation to oh no, everyone's integrated, but there's still a system kind of making sure you don't get in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, got you. Yeah.
So when you moved to D.C., you were saying it was 70% Black, and and so when you moved there, I mean, that is an overwhelming majority, but was it like some kind of thing where it was like South African apartheid, where there was this small group of people that ran everything and tried to quote unquote keep you in your place, and not what was the racial vibe between whites and Blacks in DC when you moved there?
Oops, sorry, I just pulled my thing out, but let's see. Again, I was a kid. I didn't really start noticing much of what you're speaking of until I got out on my own. I started going to, I went to college. And
where'd you go to school?
University of Maryland.
Oh, cool.
I didn't go far. My mother didn't want me to go far. Even though I was trying my best to get out of it.
Yeah.
That was a trip. But anyway, I remember back then, Black folks, again, we had our own thing, and we didn't even have to see white people if we didn't want to. The only time you really saw white folks was if you worked in the government.
Right. Well, your dad worked at the IRS, and he saw them.
Yeah, and and I might have had a summer job here and there where I worked in the government. And I remember when I graduated from college, my aunt was a federal executive for the Labor Department, and she got me a job at the Labor Department. But I didn't want to stay there. I was really defiant. I ran off to New York, and started pursuing things there.
The arts,
going back and forth. Yeah, the arts and a boyfriend.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of going back and forth. I remember I had this old 68 Dodge Dart, or maybe it was a 65 Dodge. I think it was 68 Dodge Dart. Oh, rusted out. From back in there. They put a lot of salt on the street, so it rusted out the car, but. That bad boy could run, man. I used to be, my father gave me the car and he told me, don't you take this car to New York, right? And I was like saying, take the car to New York.
Yeah.
So of course I drove the car to New York and did whatever I did and came back. And one day I got a ticket and I didn't, got a ticket when I was up there and I didn't deal with it. And the insurance was in my dad's name. And so I was dumb behind, right? I wasn't thinking these things, right? Until one day my father said, I told you not to take this car to New York. I'm like, what are you talking about? So you showed me this ticket. I'm like, oh, wow.
Uh-oh. You got caught.
Yeah, man, I was busted big time.
What was your major in college?
Radio, TV, film.
Okay.
And the only reason I majored in that was because I had an interest in, radio had a connection to music. And back then I didn't really, I had this idea that if you didn't start doing music or the arts when you were small, then, forget about it.
Right. Yeah.
But, I ended up, I always would like toy around with dance. And I didn't really deal with music until much later because, again, I felt like, I missed my boat on that. But I was always very, very, very connected and very interested in, playing music and being a part of the music scene. I also see dance and music as being one and the same.
Sure.
Yeah. I was in D.C. I got involved with the African dance scene, West African dance scene. There were a lot of Senegalese there. Prior to that, prior to meeting this gentleman by the name of Hassan Conte, amazing dancer who later went to found a company called Conqueron West African Dance Company in D.C. But at the time that I met him, he had just come over, from Africa, and he couldn't speak a word of English except to say, do the movement right. He said that. Yeah. But I would see him. I saw him the first time I saw him dancing. He was leaping so high. It was like one of these buildings that had like very, very high ceilings and like a chandelier. So he was leaping so high, it looked like he was going to hit the chandelier. I was like, oh, wow, I want to do that, right?
Yeah.
And part of that, I had been doing some modern and, and I had done some improv. I would perform with this group at the University of Maryland called Improvisations Unlimited. So after I saw that, I'm like, I want to do that. So I just devoted my whole being to that.
There's something magical that happened. My connection to African music, at least on my own, the stuff I've discovered on my own, has all been like some form of late 60s and 70s West African, mostly funk.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
And Fela and all those guys like that.
Oh, yeah. Fela was ridiculous. Yeah. I actually got to see him, and I'm trying to think of the name of the club that I saw him in D.C. oh God, I can't remember the name of that club.
930 Club?
No, it was called. It was a club where they had a lot of like world music.
Okay.
And I can't remember the name of that club. But anyway, I saw him there, complete with the wives, and it was fabulous.
Yeah.
It was fabulous.
Not to take you out of this, but I know that you work with the Unlimited Sun Ra Arkestra. Is that right?
Oh, Sun Ra Arkestra?
Yeah. Tell me about that.
I'm a member of Outer Space Ways Incorporated to this day. But the way I became involved with the orchestra was through my friend. His name is Yaya. Yaya is a saxophone player and a musician that he knew about Sun Ra and the orchestra. At the time, I didn't. And he knew, as a dancer, he was like, "Oh, you gotta meet Sun Ra. You gotta be in the orchestra. I'm going to take you down to meet Sun Ra." So we went to what's the name of that club that was on in Georgetown? I can't remember the name of the club. But anyway, we went. The orchestra was playing there, and so Yaya asked him to ask Marshall Allen, who's currently the artistic director of the orchestra now, and he was kind of, I guess he was kind of a liaison to Sonny at the time. He said, "Tell Sun Ra that I got this great dancer that I want him to check out, And so he did, and so they put me on stage, and I did my thing. And from then on, I was a member of the orchestra.
That's amazing.
And so, yeah.
So real quick before you go back to your story, you call Sun Ra Sonny?
Yeah, that's what we call Sun Ra. I mean, that's what
You're pretty much one of the coolest people I've ever met.
Who, me?
Yeah, that's super cool.
Not me.
It's cool to me.
Yeah, I feel really blessed to have known him, but honestly, Sun Ra was kind of intimidating to me because I was like, I probably was maybe 21, 22, 23, something like that.
Wow.
He was a little intimidating to me, but not to say that he was intimidating, but he was just so mysterious and to me. But June Tyson, she was like, she kind of groomed me. She was actually the very person that groomed me. And maybe Sun Ra told her that, hey, show her the ropes, right? And John Gilmore, I felt protected around John Gilmore and Marshall because there were some real characters in that band, man.
Yeah.
And I always regretted not touring with them initially, like when I first joined the band, because one time I was talking to later at Blues Alley, a friend of mine that played with Dizzy Gillespie. I got to know him through another friend of mine that was playing with Dizzy. He said that he was in Italy and he ran into some of the orchestra members. And they asked him, "Hey, where are y'all staying?" And my friend Ed Cherry, he said, we're staying at the so-and-so hotel. And then he said, "Well, where y'all staying?" And they told Ed, "Oh, we're sleeping in the bus." And when he said that, I was like to myself, "Oh, hell no, I'm not touring."
Yeah.
These horny ass. Oh, no way. No. And so I regretted that for the longest until like maybe several years later, I got a call to do a 2-week stint in Switzerland with the orchestra. And so that was amazing. And then maybe a couple of years later, we did like a whole tour of Europe. But and then in between that, through the years, I did stuff like on the East Coast, did some things here in Austin, did some things. I remember one time performing with them in where was that? Richmond, when I lived in Richmond. I basically kind of catch up with the band wherever I happen to be.
Yeah. How did you? But
nowadays,
sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say nowadays they don't really tour with dancers now because I guess of financial things. I mean, financial situations. They scaled the band down.
Yeah.
And of course the dancers are the first to go. But I did, like on that last tour that I mentioned, I had always heard about the legendary Wisteria, Judith Mendez. And I got a chance to actually perform with her on that tour.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I call her Sunshine because she is the coolest person on the planet. I'm just on Ray. She's Sunshine for real.
Awesome.
I love her.
That's awesome. So you basically like you kind of have moved like doing all of the disciplines of the arts from music to dance. When did you start acting around that same time?
Let's see. Well, how did that come? Well, the way that it all started, the whole acting aspect, I put it in parentheses because I don't think I'm such a great actor. But I wanted to do what they call character modeling. Back in the day, they called it character modeling, where you did commercials. You might do print work, commercials and print work.
Right.
And so at the time, I was married and living in Richmond, Virginia. And I was trying to break into it. And there was one agency there, talent agency, saying that, I had this, they said, you had a great look, but we just don't know what to do with you. It was, one of those situations where they weren't really dealing with black images back then, or particularly black images that were like with natural hair.
Right.
They weren't dealing with black people who had a certain look, Yeah. But then, eventually when I came here, I went through a couple of ages that were strikes until I landed upon Acclaimed Talent. And I've been with them ever since the turn of the century. That sounds like a long time ago, right? But
yeah.
Since 2000, since 99, 2000, I've been with Acclaimed Talent. And, doing commercials, I got lucky enough to get in a couple of films. I've done a couple of indie films that, because of the pandemic, I'm not sure when we'll see them. But
doesn't it seem like a good time to release a movie?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe not for an indie movie. I don't know.
People are just watching stuff like crazy.
That's true. That's in that respect. It's true. Maybe with the independents, they don't really. I don't know. Maybe they don't have the foray to
right.
To get into, say, a Netflix or a Hulu or wherever those
right.
streaming platforms are. But I think that he was looking to premiere it, soon, probably a little before this. Maybe around the time that this whole pandemic happened. Yeah. But I'm anxious to see it. I actually did see, he had a screening for us, the people that were in it, and our friends. We saw it at the Alamo Draft House. Oh, man. It's called Duncan. The movie's called Duncan. And it deals with, do you know about it?
No. I wrote it down. I was ready.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it deals with it's kind of a dark comedy of sorts, dealing with that Pizzagate thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I play. I don't even want to tell people about it. Oops, I gotta remember. I can't lean back.
It's when you get excited. Yeah, it's when you get excited they pop out.
Yeah. So let me try to bring this closer. So go ahead.
As a creator, because you write as well, right?
Yeah, I haven't done much writing lately, but yeah, I direct my own project, The Healing Caravan. I haven't really directed any plays or any, anything like that, or any movies or anything like that.
In talking to, do you know Tamika Soretti?
I do.
Yeah, I was talking to her.
She's a legitimate actress.
She's
a legitimate actress.
Yeah. She's a great filmmaker, too. We were kind of talking about a lot of... there have been these things like, they took Gone with the Wind off of HBO. When I talked to her about it, I didn't know why. But then I read this thing that they're going to do this contextualization of how black people are represented in this film. Like, hey, this is not what it was like, blah, blah, blah. But that's not really what people are looking for. They're looking for a place for black executives at HBO to make decisions and to have black creators tell black stories.
Right. So that you don't end up having Gone with the Winds and that kind of stuff. Am I still connected? Hello?
Yeah. Oh, you're totally connected.
Okay. Sounds like something happened with... Okay. All right.
No, you're good. Where do you stand on that stuff? How do you see all that?
Well, I feel like... how do I say it? People show their colors how they show it, you know? And whoever, you know, had the vision to create something like a Gone with the Wind, they created it, and it's out there. And in a way, I think it's important for people to see what that was, you know, so that they can understand where the psyche was at the time.
Like white people trying to not make themselves look like monster slave owners,
right?
Like everyone's
it's
friends.
Almost,
yeah,
it's almost like wiping out, you know, wiping your shame away or something. It kind of feels like
there's been a lot of that in American history.
Yeah. That I guess maybe black folks are concerned that, you know, and I could see where they may be concerned that people might see it and think that's the way we are. And yeah, there's a concern for that. There's definitely a concern for that. But I also feel like people need to understand where they came from, where that came, that the mentality that created something like that. I guess, you know, people who study film or who study psychology, sociology, or, you know, some of those sciences could take those types of films as case studies.
Birth of a Nation, for sure.
I'm sorry?
Birth of a Nation.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's one I never knew about until the last couple of weeks, and I've learned a lot about it, and it's a pretty frightening depiction. It
is. Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. Yeah. So, you know, and I think the way I ended up seeing it was when I was in college.
In like a film class?
Maybe it was probably a Black history, some type of Black history related course I was taking. But yeah, it's kind of tricky. I think about the Cosby Show because this is kind of a side, but and it's maybe not even related. But in terms of them not showing the Cosby Show anymore, that may be, you know, good in terms of punishing Bill Cosby, but I think in a sense it's punishing all the other actors that contributed as well. And, you know, they aren't receiving the royalties from that, you know, from that being aired. I mean, if they wanted to somehow deny him the royalties, that's one thing. But then, you know, the others, it didn't have anything to do with that. I don't feel like that's cool because being somebody that, you know, gets a part of my, you know, salary from royalties, you know, that would be kind of devastating to, you know,
Also, those were the first, like that and the Jeffersons were the first sort of like depictions of Black life not being good times or Sanford and Son.
Right. Exactly. And now, you know, you don't have that reference anymore. And that's a good point, you know. That's a good point. But, you know, yeah, that's what I had to say about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I find those gestures, even though they might be done in a benevolent nature, is that what you're going to do instead of actually bringing people and giving them a seat at the table? Like, is that what's going to happen? Oh, no, we took off Gone with the Wind. Aren't we good now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. No, as a matter of fact, you're kind of, you know, trying to give yourself a face that you don't have. Give yourself a false face.
Right.
I mean, the real face was that you thought this was okay.
Yeah.
That's the real face.
Yeah.
So, let people see the real face.
Yeah. What do you think about all that's sort of been going on, like within the Austin music scene over the last pretty much week and a half between, are you friends with Chaka? Do you know him?
Yeah, I know Chaka and Key. I've been off of social media, and I'd heard that there was some kind of riffs going on about who should be hitting what.
Right.
So I don't really know exactly what's going on because I haven't really been checking in on social media. But I will say that as far as the scene here.
Yeah, tell me about your experience here.
You wouldn't really know there's Black people on the scene if you were to leave it up to certain entities. You wouldn't know it, and you wouldn't know that there are Black musicians here. That there are very good Black musicians here. Because I look at shows that say, I think the other day I saw a rerun of Anthony Bourdain's No Reservations. He was showing South by Southwest, and I don't think I saw one Black.
Yeah.
I didn't see one Black band.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything Black. Actually, nothing was Black as far as the music scene, as far as anything really.
Yeah.
But as it relates to music, you wouldn't think that there were any Black musicians here. And I heard Brandon on the podcast you did with him talking about the myriad of Black musicians, and I didn't really know that the reason why Austin is the live music capital of the world, it was because of all the Black clubs that were here that had Black musicians, like killer Black musicians that white guys would come and watch and learn from, and eventually, get into the scene, and eventually create other scenes, and maybe even take over the scene, and so, there you have it now. I wasn't aware of that, but when that was happening, I was in
DC.
the DC area. Yeah.
Do you think that the hope or solution would be to start some Black clubs?
Well, I don't know about a solution, but it would definitely be a help. We definitely need to have our own thing, particularly if we're not being, we're not giving.
Oh. Wait, you froze again. So we were talking about a solution being having a club, having a Black
club?
music club.
I think a scene.
But I could still go there, right?
Of course.
Okay.
I mean, it even reminds me of what Sabi was telling me. He was telling me, Dr. Sabi, my friend, that's the healer.
Right.
There was a guy, a policeman that sent another policeman to get a Black policeman to get a remedy for this white guy for gout, and he had cured the guy of gout. And so the guy was like, "Well, why didn't you come?" Sabi was like, "Well, why didn't the white guy come?" He's like, I didn't think he treated white people. He's like, I treat everybody. Right, so it's the same thing, why, no, I mean, of course anybody can come.
Right. I don't know how the equality in the music business, I'm still just trying to get my head around it because I've been a part of this music scene for so long, and I've noticed the disparity. There's a time where I didn't even realize there was hip hop in Austin until one time I was on a bill with Vallejo at this place called Steamboat that was on 6th Street, and an MC Overlord came up and I was like, Donnell was the first rapper in Austin that I met.
Wow.
And that was 1995. I mean, and it wasn't like I had my head in the sand. I was just kind of doing my thing. And, I have a brother a younger brother that lives in Miami that grew up there, that came here to visit a couple years ago. And we ran around to a couple different places, see some people at Continental Club, run down to Sea Boys, go to a bar. And when we were on our way home, he looked at me in the Uber and said, "Do you know any black people? Because your world is just white people. Did you ever notice that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do notice that. But, you know, like in that mindset, I'm like, I know. Isn't that weird? You know what I mean?" So, there is a disparity. I just don't know. Like, to me, I don't know if an answer is like, what do you have? Like Black Night at Hotel Vegas? I mean, it just seems weird.
It is weird.
Why can't we all just play together?
Well, I think the problem is that there's a certain intimidation that it seems with maybe, you know, the white musicians or the white club owners, or that they want to promote their own, but they feel like the black musicians will outshadow them, and I think that might be the issue, that they don't want to be outshadowed. They don't want to be outshined. I mean, because how are you going to, you know, beat somebody at their own game? I mean, jazz is black music. You know, R&B is black music.
But rock and roll is black music.
Hello, I was just going to say that. It's black music. You know, how, you know, this whole idea of, you know, how do we beat each other beat them at their own game? Well, we don't. We just don't let them in. But the solution I feel, is black folks need to create their own. And, you know, but the thing that happens with black folks when we create our own is, you know, unfortunately, situations like, I also remember Brandon talking about different clubs burning down. You know, the clubs were closed down or burning down.
Like Brandon talked about.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, and it goes back to, like, you know, when black people were able to do things like, you know, build their own communities, and then out of jealousy, they would be destroyed. So, you know, you have that happening. We'll build our own, and, you know, I just have to, you know, trust. I'm knocking on wood that when we build our own, when we create our own, because, you know, we are, you know, mobilizing when we build our own, that it won't be destroyed, it won't be sabotaged, and maybe with the new mindset of the communities of white folks, they can see that or understand that what we're doing is necessary, and there won't be as much intimidation. I'm thinking optimistically, you know, that we'll be able to thrive and, right. you know, be who we express ourselves the way that we express ourselves, yeah. in a venue where we can do it, you know?
Yeah.
Or in venues where we can do it, because
more than one venue. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
You've also written some books. I talked about that Healing Cuisine Volume 1, but you also you wrote the No Mistake.
Yeah.
Journey to Self-Acceptance.
Yeah, that was kind of, it was inspired by my own experience as a child. There was this experiment with the black dolls. I don't know if you ever saw the doll test. There was a black psychologist that did this doll test where he took a white doll and a black doll, and he got a group of very young black children. They couldn't have been more than 5 or 6. And he showed them a white doll. He said, showed them both. Well, which doll is the nice doll? Which doll is the doll you want to play with? Which doll is the prettiest doll? They would all pick the white doll. And so then when he said some of the pejorative things, the ugly one, and the one that's not as smart, the one, they would choose the black doll. Then he said, well, which one looks like you? Said to one little girl. And then she hesitated. And then she slowly went to the black doll, because I could see that in her brain, it clicked that, wow, I think that this doll is bad, but yet I look like this doll. And so that broke my heart. And then I just started writing. I remember I started writing that book, the draft of that book. And I started, 6 hours later, I had the draft of the book. I was so moved by that and so hurt by it.
Totally.
Because I remember being that little girl of thinking that I was lesser because I was Black. And, I don't really, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I don't want any child to feel like that ever.
No.
So that was why I wrote the book.
How did you change the tapes? Have you ever been in therapy?
Change the tapes.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
no. What do you mean?
You grow up.
Oh, you mean
and you've got these tapes in your head. How do you change the tapes that are telling you that you're lesser because of the way that the world has viewed you, and you in turn have looked at the world as something else being better than you?
Right. Well, for one, like I told you, when I was, I guess I was probably in 8th or 9th grade when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. Prior to that, I, didn't have a really strong feeling of myself as a Black person. There's certain, I don't know if there's any real formula. It's just, there's something that will happen, or some experience that will happen. Just like with my healing experience, I, came across people and resources that, brought me towards, what I needed for my healing. The same thing with, my emotional psychic healing, this healing of my psyche. I come across people and events and situations that, give you a different view, a different understanding, I remember I was dating this guy in college, and by then I, had what I considered a healthier sense of myself as a Black person, but I was still straightening my hair. And so he was like, "Why do you straighten your hair?" Just frankly, he wasn't, chastising me or anything. And he said, "Why do you straighten your hair?" I'm like, and I just had to ask myself, yeah, why am I straightening my hair? So then I stopped straightening my hair.
Yeah. Well, in ways that when you were a kid, there wasn't really any sort of depiction of real Black people in commercials or television or anything like that.
No, if we saw Black people on TV, it was like an event.
Yeah. I understand that on the Cuban level as well, because there's like a thing that would happen, like, when there's a Cuban guy on a TV show, your grandma calls, "You got to watch this show. We're on TV."
Right. I think I even put that in the book. Abina, the protagonist in my story, she would say, "Oh, there's Black people on TV," and then everybody would run to the TV. That's basically what would happen when I was little. It was like a real event. It was an anomaly.
I've heard a lot of people say that. Yeah. Well, go ahead. What I was going to ask you is, in your childhood compared to now, do you think that young Black women now have those same sort of feelings now that sort of those, you know what I'm saying? Now that the media or whatever they're exposed to is not totally more, but is more inclusive?
I can't speak to their feelings, but what I can say is, compared to my upbringing then and now, it's like totally different. I mean, if you were to see somebody with, I hadn't even tried to do anything with my hair.
Right.
If this is like tantamount back in the day to not brushing your teeth or bathing. Right. Allowing your hair to be like this. But now, it's very different. Although I do speak to young people that are coming to terms with their natural hair, as far as black girls in particular, beautiful sisters, beautiful sisters, having like beautiful manes of like fluffy. I like the term nappy. Some people think that's pejorative, but I love the term nappy hair. Beautiful, beautiful hair, and taking issue with still coming to terms with the idea that their hair is beautiful.
Yeah.
They're at the point where they can wear their hair natural and feel like it's not ugly.
Right.
But growing up, particularly here in Austin, where you may be in a school that's mostly white, if not all white.
Right.
And everyone has straight hair, and here you are with your hair bushy, and as it is, and in its natural state, and maybe you might be getting looks and stares, or weird questions or weird comments, and you feel a way about it, and maybe mom and dad aren't as helpful in terms of making you feel good about who you are,
right,
and how you look. But some kids are fortunate enough to have parents that are that are supportive and know the deal.
Yeah,
and can tell you, hey, it's them that don't know any better.
Right.
Just don't think about them. Don't set those people. They're ignorant.
Yeah.
So it's really good to see. I've seen some kids that my friends have children that have gone through that struggle, or and they've come through the other side of that struggle, and it's so refreshing to see that their own expressions of themselves, whether they like cut it down
right,
like cut it all the way down, or just wear it as like a mane, a magnificent mane.
Yeah,
they're really feeling good about themselves.
Yeah.
And it's a really wonderful thing to see.
it's funny because I was born in '68, so my growing up, like my mom was in college when I was a little kid, so her friends at school, it was the early '70s, so that was the time of that. So whenever I saw a black person that straightened their hair, I was always like, man, why would you ever do that when you could have this bitchin' head of hair that I could never grow, Right.
Yeah, and then black folks. I mean, we have on the other hand, there's a thing called colorism. I think Brennan had talked about that too. I remember my first husband. He was very light skinned, and he felt a way about himself because he was light skinned and had like not straight hair but curlier hair.
Right. And
he and his sister, he told me they actually got teased and bullied because they went to a predominantly black school. This was not here in Austin. This was in Virginia. They were teased and bullied because of the way they looked, because they were light skinned and they had straighter hair. So he kind of had a complex on the other end.
That he wasn't black enough.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess so.
Is it School Days that really, or She's Got to Have It? One of those two really covers that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in there.
Yeah. The sororities and fraternities were kind of based on those things. Black sororities and fraternities back in the day, maybe even now, but back in the day they were based. I remember one time sitting in the student union when I was in college. I was sitting with my girlfriend, and she was darker skinned. And this one guy comes up to us, and he's talking, and we get on the subject of the sororities, and he says, well, you look like you would pledge Delta, and she looks like she would pledge Zeta. And we looked at dude and was like, just go away. You sound stupid. Yeah. But that was a reality. And like way back in the day, it's like when my parents were going to school, that was pretty much how it was set up. Certain looks were relegated to pledge certain sororities. I don't know if it was so much like that with the fraternities, but definitely with the sororities, the black sororities. And of course, nobody pledged any white sororities.
No. Well, yeah. The whole sorority and fraternity thing is never. Those guys always kicked my ass. You know what I mean? So I'm not hugely fond of that sect of thought.
Right. Yeah. Same. If I was kind of a rebel in that kind of thing. I was the type of person that was in it and not of it. I lived in an ashram when I was in D.C., but I didn't actually join up. You know,
right?
There were all kind of different organizations in school, like political organizations, and I don't know. I had a certain not a phobia, but just
no. I know exactly what you mean. It's very.
I wasn't really into joining groups like that.
I feel like that happens when somebody looking at your breadth of your artistic output. You don't. There's no club you could join. You do too much cool shit. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know so much of that, but yeah, I just have I guess a lot of times my vision kind of moves away from most people's ideas. And in order to express my ideas thoroughly, I generally just do my own thing. With the Healing Caravan, it's my vision. It's my experience. It's my voice. And then I have people that help me support that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you at with? I'm sorry. Let me rephrase this. How do you feel we can take forward steps in progress in this race issue that has come to light? And now it seems like, and I don't know if it's real, but it seems like whatever people in charge, not all of them, but some people in places are opening their doors and saying, come in, let's work this out. What are the, what do you see the healing looking like?
Well, I think the main thing that has to happen is for white people to educate themselves.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. And to stop as this woman. Did we speak of Robin DiAngelo? That the woman, she wrote a book called White Fragility.
No,
and
but I'd like to read that.
She's a white woman. Okay. She's like a psychiatrist or something. She has a PhD in something in the area of where she works, and she's written several, at least that book, and has done various theses on this idea of white fragility. And basically, white fragility has to do with when Black people say something about their situation. White people become very defensive, and they have various ways of deflecting. And she's been working with white folks in that respect. And I would say that the one thing that's going to move this forward is for white people to stop being so fragile, and to and it's something that white folks don't tend to get it unless it's somebody within their own group that makes them woke, so to speak. When Black people express their feelings of how white people are behaving, they think that we're being angry, we're being bitter.
Yeah.
What's
wrong? They're not slaves. Like, we don't make them drink out of different water fountains. What the hell else do they want? I mean, I've actually heard that.
Yeah, you can always get what you want to get, and it's not like it wasn't. What are you complaining about? That that
they got
kind of
Tyler
thing.
Perry and Oprah. What else do they need?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And then and it didn't take. It took this man George Floyd, the image of him being like extinguished, basically, like systematically, like extinguished before their eyes, to say, oh, that was horrible. Now we understand. And, and I guess they're thinking about all the other things, that we've told them. And, and it's not that it hasn't been seen before. I mean, there's been plenty of video caught on tape situations.
I know, but I'm guilty of that same thing.
What's that?
of just keep on going. Like I was a huge fan of Do the Right Thing, and I saw that movie twice in the theater, and I thought I understood what they were saying. And now that I'm learning more, I can look back 30 years ago and go like, oh, I should have really put more fucking thought or work into it. Sorry to cuss.
No, it's all good.
I should have.
I curse.
Good.
I cuss too. I just didn't do it here.
I just didn't. It's too big for me to do something about it. What am I supposed to do? What am I going to have for lunch? And then it's out of my mind. Not
to mention that was a fictitious movie. It's easy to, be entertained by a movie, and it has some,
he was speaking
content.
Yeah, of course, but he was speaking on things as a white dude that I had never heard before.
Yeah, but I would say that it's unfortunately it's fallen on the shoulders of white America to really own up to their denials. They can say, well, we didn't enslave anybody, but as we've been saying for so long, you're benefiting from the system that was built by the labor of Black people who never got compensated. Right. You're benefiting from that, and I don't like it either, but that's the way it fucking is,
Yeah. Yeah.
But and you have to come to terms with it, and talk to your people in the higher ups to figure out what are we going to do about this shit.
I'm doing what I can.
But the thing about capitalism is, and this is a capitalistic system, and this is the rub. There cannot be capitalism without somebody being on the bottom.
That's true.
Somebody is creating the wealth so that people up here can enjoy it. How is that going to be fixed?
I don't know.
We don't want to be socialists. There's socialism. People go crazy when you say that word. But I don't know if America is willing to get rid of capitalism. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how or if it can be resolved, because the system was built on the backs of Black people making money for to make other people rich.
Yeah, basically a model of.
That's how.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So it's basically a model of no labor costs, free labor.
Right.
That's unbelievable.
Right. How are you going to fix that? What are y'all willing to do? I'm not saying you in particular, but
I know.
In general. what are you willing to do to create a balance? I'm not a economist. I'm I don't know.
Me neither.
I don't know, but I do know that I don't see it getting. I mean, I like to stay optimistic, but unless that can be figured out, it's going to lapse into the same place. Until something else, maybe even more horrific happens. So I'm hoping that this is the catalyst. This is the straw that broke the camel's back that creates some meaningful change.
Yeah.
I mean, the civil rights movement, that was another tier, of evening things up.
Yeah.
Maybe, hopefully could bring it here, but I don't know.
I think that also honest education and owning up to things that actually happened, like the Black Wall Street thing in Tulsa.
There's so many. Did you know about the one in Slocum, Texas?
No.
Oh yeah, it's something very similar. It was like some petty dispute where there was a guy, a brother that was I think he got a construction, maybe a road construction contract. This is back in the 1920s, and there's this white guy didn't like it. He created like a fomented all kind of like dissension amongst his people, and as a result, they ran all the black people out of town. As they shot them in the backs as they were running out of town. I mean, they shot them in the back. They ran into the woods, and the black folks ran into the woods trying to get away, and they just killed them. They slaughtered everybody, and then took over their property. And that wasn't really brought out until the 80s when this white journalist, wrote about it in the Statesman. But this is. I mean, you said you didn't know about Slocum, Texas. There's so many others all over the country. I heard about something in Oregon. I mean, it's just all over the country. These types of things were happening. It wasn't just these isolated incidents of the two that most people know about, Rosewood and Black Wall Street in Oklahoma. There were many, many more. Many more.
Yeah, the way I found out about that. The Black Wall Street in Tulsa was I was watching that show, The Watchmen.
Yeah.
And that scene, at the end of that scene, I'm like, no way. And so I Google it, and I'm like, dude, I went to school. I didn't do college. I went to a year junior college to learn recording. But I think of myself as an intelligent person that has sought out knowledge. And somewhere along the line, I would have heard something, not just watching some HBO show.
Right.
That featured the thing about it. Same thing with the fact that I didn't realize that I didn't know that Mississippi didn't ratify the 13th Amendment until 2013.
Crazy? Isn't that crazy?
That's not crazy. That is another word. I don't even know. There's no word to fit that happened and I didn't know about it.
Like
that's another thing I heard, and I was like, really? And I looked it up, and I was like, oh my God.
Mississippi, goddamn.
Yeah.
That song by Nina Simone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of shit that I don't even know. I mean, like I said, there's so many places that the similar insurrections happened that nobody's talked about, or that nobody knows about. I just found out recently not recently, maybe a couple of years ago, that Oregon was a state that was built by white people for white people.
Nothing against Oregon, but it seems like that.
I mean, that black people weren't allowed in Oregon, basically.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff, and it takes education. I mean, the thing about black people, we've had to, as a matter of survival, we've had to know the ways of white folks. But in terms of just understanding why black people are so pissed off, white people need to understand what has happened in our world, in our orbit over the past centuries, really.
Yeah.
It just keeps going, and it just keeps going. And
it's terrible. I can see why, in my mind, I didn't work on this more to figure out, because it's insurmountable is what it seems like. And it seems like a tidal wave coming at you that you can't avoid everything is broken.
Yeah. It's like, how are y'all going to repair it? They talk about reparations. I mean, when they've let shit go for so long, something has to be done. Something has to be done.
Yeah.
If I didn't have to pay taxes, that would be nice.
I never even thought about that.
But for real, if I didn't, I mean, just black people don't have to pay taxes. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, that's not enough, honestly. But that would be a major weight on my my shoulders. Just not to have to do that, anymore.
Yeah.
But did you hear about? I had learned about this a couple of years ago, where I told you I was raised Catholic. Georgetown University owned slaves, and then they actually sold the slaves because they were in dire straits financially to some place in Louisiana. So I mean.
Well, that sucks, but it didn't give you any sort of like positive feeling that at one point this place did own slaves and now you went to school there?
No, I went to the University of Maryland.
Oh, sorry. Why did I think you went to? But then that it was integrated in some way, or no?
I'm sorry. What was the question?
Like, it's. Is there any? What is the feeling that you have, as opposed to the feeling that this Georgetown owned slaves, but the fact that like, I don't know. I don't even know what the point I was trying to make.
Well, the thing that was striking to me, being raised Catholic, and in terms of Black Catholics, I mean that kind of feels like an oxymoron.
It totally does.
To the point when I was 4 years old, I asked my mother, "Well, when can I stop going to church?" And she said, "Well, when I was 16." And the day I turned 16, I stopped going. But I digress. But the fact that there are like Black Catholics, and that Georgetown University, a Catholic university, owned slaves, and then they sold the slaves so that they could, get better themselves financially. But I hear that to repair that situation, they offer free schooling to the descendants of those slaves. There was actually on Finding Your Roots, there was like a sister, what's the sister's name? An actress. Her people were descendants of those slaves that were
really?
enslaved. Yeah. And she went to a reunion that of her family that
Oh wow.
Yeah, man. It runs deep.
It runs very deep.
Yeah, man.
It's weird. I'm trying to find just out of my own idiotic optimism. I'm always like trying to find well, there's got to be some positive note we can end on with this.
All right. Well, let me say this. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I like you, and I feel like conversations like this have enlightened me, and hopefully the people listening, they enlighten them in some way to feel like if everybody. It's such a huge task that it is going to take everybody working together, except for the KKK, to try and make this work,
Right. Well, I was going to say, I guess in closing, I'm really guarding against being, in this whole victim mode, because that's a crippling state to be in as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, things were done to us. Things were done to me personally. I can even go on the family level, where things were done to me. And I even wrote a poem about that. It's called 37 Years. Let me see if I have it.
Can you read it?
I can read it. Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah, let me find that. I hope I have it saved where I can get to it.
People can find. Do you still use the All Things Chandra at yolasite.com, right? That's a good site. I'm just kind of filling the dead air time with facts about Chandra.
Yeah.
All Things Chandra.
Oh, I know where it is. It's in my. I emailed it to myself. I'll find it.
Okay.
Right quick.
It'll be easy to find.
Yeah.
You did a lot of. You've done a lot of. Have you ever been published as a poet?
Let's see. Actually, there was an anthology that was done through the Austin Poetry Slam. One of my poems called "I Am Perfect" was published in there. And let's see. God, hold on.
I used to not do well with poetry either, although I love it. I had a difficult time with the vulnerability that someone put forth when they read their own poem, that it would make me so nervous I would laugh not at the person in a mean way, but laugh out of nervousness because I can only imagine how weird it feels to be that vulnerable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, the whole reason why I don't even do the poetry scene anymore, mainly because of going back to the whole idea of victimhood and victimization. I was tired of, I started seeing where so much of what I was saying and writing about was dealing with being a victim. And then I started noticing that other poets, how they were so invested in being victims.
Yeah, it doesn't work unless they're victims. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
And so I just had to get away from that whole scene.
Yeah.
Okay, so
What is this poem called, real fast, so I can write down the title?
It's called 37 Years.
Okay.
Okay, here it is. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Fall 1964. A 7-year-old invisible nigger gal in a pale sea of plaid pinafores, dark pants, stiff white shirts, and black habits shrouding white dysfunction. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. At Sacred Heart, I was well schooled in my 3 R's. Race inferiority plus rejection equals resentment. The brain of a child like dry cellulose, absorbent, malleable. The lesson could have been anything. Too bad it wasn't the 3 S's. Self-love plus self-acceptance equals self-reliance. My parents, wounded by Jim Crow segregation, thrilled by the illusion of acceptance through forced integration, eager guinea pigs in an experiment in race miscegenation. They did their best. Now it's up to me to do the rest. The test being, can I succeed in reversing 37 years of desperate need? 37 long, painful years of just beginning to see my true enemy has not been white people or my parents or my abused turned abusive brother or the grade school bullies or the boy who impregnated me or the legions of lovers who loved and left me. They are all a reflection of me. I have been my worst enemy. 37 years of conducting adult affairs from the mind of a wounded child. I was hit in my soft spot, that delicate, vulnerable place on a baby skull that strengthens with maturity. 37 years of brain damage, infected, bruised before mature ripeness. Circuits jammed with misinformation, activating fear, desperation, self-condemnation. 37 years of twisting and contorting, changing and rearranging, compromising and dishonoring me to be a compatible, agreeable, amenable, acceptable shell of a being. 37 years of deceiving others, but mainly myself. 37 years of shame and blame and manipulation and exacting revenge and despising myself for not being the me I thought I should be. 37 years of being afraid of being alone, of being afraid of just being. 37 years times more, I seek guidance, oneness, joy, peace, in the name of the Mother, Father, and of the Daughter, Son, and of the cosmic, ultimate. So be it.
That's beautiful. Very,
Thank
very
you.
powerful.
Thank you. You know, I wrote that poem after I broke up with this guy, and I was like really, 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 like just, I mean, it felt horrific. I won't go into the details, but it was, I'll say it was horrific in a sense that, you know, I felt so victimized, but then I had to start looking at how did you manage to become a victim in the first place? What story did you tell yourself to engage with someone that would victimize you in that way? And so that's how I ended up writing that poem.
It's pretty heavy self-examination, huh?
Yeah.
Is there, there was a part in it that started, there was a weird distortion that was weird, playing weird distorted musical notes instead of words for just a couple of seconds. But if you could send me, if you don't mind sending that to me, I'll put it in the text of this podcast.
Okay.
Because I think that's a really unbelievably beautiful and powerful piece of work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Actually, I think it was, let's see. Yeah, there you are. I can send it to you
Yeah.
right now. Ta-da.
Well, Chandra, thank you. I mean, is there anything else that you want to, I know that there's probably tons and tons more, but is there anything else? Okay, you just sent it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
I would just say start with self. Start with one. You know, start with I mean, because that's how anything changes. I can't make somebody else change.
Right.
The only person I can change is myself, and that goes for everyone. You know, you can't. You can only change, be the change that you want to see. And you know, it starts here. It starts with self-examination. Everyone just needs to, you know, examine themselves, and you know, tell the truth to themselves about themselves, and be willing to tell that truth to others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Treat people the way you want to be treated. You know.
Yeah. Well, it's been great meeting you and talking with you.
Same. Thank you for allowing me to be
Well,
here. I
thank you.
was kind of nervous about doing this because I was like, well, what am I going to say that hasn't already been said? And you know,
Your own personal story, I mean, is, you know, the sad thing is that everything has been said, but I think it needs to keep being said to remind people that it's happened not just to one guy we saw on TV, but to everyone you know and everyone you come in contact with of color.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So it's not,
Right.
and I appreciate you taking the time, because one of the things that I've learned through these conversations is it's not your job to educate me. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and I hope my audience does too.
Yes. Check out Robin DiAngelo. I mean, she's there's this one podcast she did with Michigan, I think Michigan Public Radio, something to do with the state of Michigan, and Michigan University or something. But she really breaks down she breaks it down. She really breaks it down there. And I can't
Fragility?
remember. White fragility. And I think that it wasn't called white fragility, that particular broadcast. It was called something else. I can't remember.
Robin DiAngelo is her name?
Yeah, DIANGELO, capital DI, capital ANGELO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's wonderful getting to know you. I hope I get to see you perform in person.
Oh, I hope so too.
Yeah.
I can't wait to do something. Well, actually, I actually got to do something with
James.
With James.
Yeah, he told me about that. Yeah.
Oh man, everybody! I laughed because everybody was, you know, there was like a lot of great food there, and I was just being so fed by the music that I was totally fed. I was literally fed. I wasn't hungry.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That's
thank you so
beautiful.
much.
Well, thank you so much, Chandra. I look forward to meeting you in person.
Same here.
Yeah.
Take care.
You too.
Peace.